Right, so here we have two components, right? One is rendering the list of courses, right? And the other one is going to display the details for a course as I select the course. So how do we do that? So what we're going to do is that we would like to map different components to different URLs so that if you see one thing in the URL, then if you say if you're going to look at the course of list, you navigate to the course of list. If you want to see the course viewer, you navigate to the course viewer. I don't want to see both of them. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to go back to our root component. Right? Instead of displaying these two components, what we're going to do is that we're going to instead use a router outlet. So a router outlet, right, notice that if I go back, notice that it's not going to render anything. Right? So a router outlet is the equivalent in React of declaring a router in React, right? And then inside of that router, you declare many different routes, right? And then the routes allow you to map different URLs to different components, right? The route will say, in the router, display this component when this URL appears, right? So this is the root of the content, and we're going to inject content in here depending what the pattern, the URL pattern. Okay, right now, this URL pattern, which is the root, where there's nothing here at the top, okay, nothing is mapped to it. Right, so we'd like to be able to map some content. Right, any questions? Let's see. All right, so let's map something. So the way we're going to do that, the way we configure it, in React, what we would do is that we would have an outer router element, and then inside we would have many routes, right? And many route elements, which did the mapping. Here, the mapping is actually going to be implemented inside of this TypeScript file called app routing module. App routing module was created for us at the beginning when this boilerplate application was being created, when we did ng-new, right? If you remember, it asked us, do you want me to install the router? And we said yes. And so what it did for us is that it created this file, and also it loaded all the necessary libraries. Notice that if we go to app module, we'll see that one of the things that is being imported here is the app routing module. See that? That was added by the fact that we chose to have routing installed in this application, right? It's still part of the, so app routing module is part of Angular, right? As opposed to in React, the routing module is actually not part of React, right? It's a separate library from third party, and there's actually many routing libraries, different routing libraries. You can choose which one you want. Here, right, we're using the one that is being provided by the Angular team. Okay, so the way we're going to configure it, the way we configure it is, let me close a couple of things here, too many things open. The way we're going to configure it is that in the app routing module, we configure the routes, right? So the syntax is different here, right? In React, the way you configure a route is that in the router, you declare many route elements. And each route element has two things, if you remember, right? It had a path, right? And it had a component. Remember that? Well, same thing here. Same thing here, but here it's done through these objects in this array, whereas in React it was elements, right? But logically and conceptually it's the same thing. What we're going to do here is we're going to say that if the pattern of the path is empty, meaning, right, if you are here with nothing in the URL, I would like to display the following component. I would like to display the course list component. See that? Once I do that, and I refresh my browser, right, so the root, right, is mapped to displaying this component. And if instead we have another path, that might be course viewer. Course viewer. You can call it whatever we want. Course viewer. We can maybe display instead the course viewer. There it is. Right, so if we see this in the URL, then it will render something else. We can say if we see course viewer, notice that it renders course viewer. What we'd like to be able to do is navigate between these two. Right, notice that the back button works, the forward button works, so it's really driven by the URL. Okay, so what I'd like to be able to do is, as I click through the courses, right, it navigates to the course viewer. Let's do that next.